I'd like to throw in here to just before I need to start cooking it for completely here, because this is one of those phenomena that I came across when I was starting back in the 90s, of course, that just like many others, there was this feeling that it will be infinite, it will be going on, and therefore it did not end. We never had an ending. I never finished a campaign, if you will, back then. But then in the late 90s, early 2000s, I started to think, I think it was around the time when I was watching Buffy, that I was starting to think about a campaign like a TV series. The first session is the pilot. Maybe it ends there. Maybe we don't pick this game or whatever, or the characters get so interesting that we want to explore them more, and we want to have the monster of the week kind of thing, and we also want to have some overarching theme that ties in where the character development, the challenge of that session, and the overarching things intersect now and then. Maybe it's only one level that intersects. Maybe it's just this character and what happens to them that suddenly intersects with the big theme of the season, if you will. Or maybe it's all three at the same time, or whatever it may be. And when I started tweaking that a bit more, that's how I've been playing since, basically, that we start something, and if it ends, well, then it's that episode was the end of the season, right, or the end of the if
there's a natural
the
ending,
series.
Then realize it. Yeah.
And only recently, let's see, 2 years ago, we had a really complete. We started it in February 1 year and ended in June the year after. And there was space for the personal development. The characters were not the same by the end of the campaign as they were in the beginning in terms of outlook on life, what they had been through, and so on. And the world was changing. But of course, this requires more from the players. Even more so than from me. I have to have the overarching and what is the challenge of today.
Doesn't it? Strangely enough.
Because it's up to them to see, like, oh, the outlook I had when this character was 16 years old is not the same when they're 20. Mm-hmm. If they've gone through hell and back, there will be differences.
What game was this, Robert?
That was Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Uh-huh. Okay.
One of the White Wolf games, the World of Darkness games, because that's one of the systems that I've been mostly using over the years, since I got into role playing through doing LARP first and then tabletop, and that was Vampire back in the days. But I gave up on Vampire a while ago.
This is the classic Nordic model, listeners out there. So,
Yes. So by viewing at that point from the start, that this could be, we maybe only do the pilot, so it's like a TV movie for one session, or it can be turned into campaign. This will be the kickstart of what goes on in the future.
Did you find that
that makes me relax more?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was thinking too of my experience with Hero Wars, the first version of the game now called Hero Quest, in which we found the same effect that you're talking about, and it formed extremely coherent chapters. And there came a point where I would say, okay, well, this chapter, we've finished. And then I was threatened with death and realized that there had to be another. I had to take stock of everything that was going on, maybe expand the scope of the setting a little bit, and say, all right, I guess it's bigger than I thought. I guess that was a chapter rather than, the end. Is that, I'm asking, I interrupted to ask if that had anything, if that sounds familiar. I mean, you talked about pilot versus campaign. Were there intermediate seasons, perhaps?
Yeah, for me, absolutely. That's how I plan things now, because, and this is just by accident that I started thinking about it in those terms, simply because of watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because that has it has all those levels
Right.
that I'm after.
Right. Yeah, I can understand why Buffy's the model for sure. So, anyone who hasn't spoken yet, talk about some long-term play that either was planned or unplanned that turned into what it was, or failures to do so. Perhaps would also be very, very useful to consider.
I can talk about a long-term play that was not really planned as long-term play. It was let's try out Legendary Lives, since Ron Ratzian had been talking about it a lot, and we ended up playing 18 sessions or something like that.
17 or 18, yeah.
Which definitely didn't plan for going on that long. Apart from else, I front-loaded all the exciting things about the characters into a huge tangled mess at the beginning, and therefore we ran out of things they wanted to do sort of further into the campaigns, which we haven't used it for. I don't know. Anyway, yes, so I don't know that I had the same sort of we must keep going or I will be murdered experience in that one. But people seemed to be enjoying themselves and we kept going. And Robbie might have a view on that as well, since he was one of the players as well. That one.
Yeah, Robbie, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, well, I can talk about this, and this also maybe dovetails a little bit with, at least from the outside, possibly what I see going on in the RuneQuest campaign, which is that the experience does change in the course of the game. Like, with Legendary Lives, I remember, okay, the first sessions were interesting. I mean, I thought I had an interesting character to kind of work with, and there were some interesting elements there. But at the beginning of the game, it's also just, there's this focus on the mechanics of the game. How does all of this work out? Legendary Lives has this kind of, I quickly learned that, I would go into a session thinking that my character had a plan, but I had to be kind of careful because of how swingy the roles could kind of come out, where you would kind of get diverge somewhere completely different. But so at the beginning, I think that there was like this more kind of just interest in like learning the game itself, like how does this game come together, and then it kind of evolved into kind of larger issues, I think. I mean, Ross did a good job of already kind of throwing a lot of stuff at the beginning there. But I think as the game continued on, the kind of becoming aware of exactly how do the different political factions, cultural factions kind of fit together, and how does my character kind of fit into all of that? I mean, I think experientially there was something that changed there. That and I hadn't necessarily planned on that kind of sequence of experiences happening. But I think one of the reasons why it did go on for so long is because there was a lot there for us to kind of learn and develop, both in terms of our own character, but also in terms of the kind of wider kind of cultural nexus that was kind of floating around us.
I had an idea based on what you said and what others have said, but I want to hear from Alexandra. Where are you thinking? Where are some of your experiences in this topic?
Okay. So when I started for playing games in I think late 90s, beginning of 2000s, there was plenty of let's say campaigns. So basically, it was like that someone brought a new game, and they decided to run a campaign. And usually it went like for I know 3-4 sessions, sometimes 5, rarely 10 or more. But usually it just stops abruptly because I don't know, either the guy who told us that he's got a new system fall in love with another one, or that like there were some personal issues with like, oh, you stole my girlfriend, so the group fall apart.
No, that was my
Or-
group. I don't know about your group, but you're talking about my
Okay.
group. You must be spying on us. So
I think I was a girlfriend in,
Yeah.
in one of those cases, even though I wasn't playing. There.
The flashbacks have just flashed
Yes,
across all the faces
yes.
of everybody except Helma here. So yeah.
Yeah, I confirm my face too, even though I'm not on camera.
Right. Going on. So okay,
Yeah.
Alexander, yes, we get it. But
So,
yeah,
so
so
it
for
was,
sure.
but it was a common thing that people were starting
Yeah.
campaigns.
They're always promised. They're always promised. Yeah.
It wasn't like it wasn't very like, it was implied promise, like, we're going to play this campaign, I have this cool idea for something, and then it kind of fall apart without reason, I think. There weren't always like personal reasons. It was just people, I know, went bored, or like they couldn't find time, which is I think it's effectively
something
the
tells
same,
me,
right?
Yeah, there's it's when people say they can't find time, there are legitimate versions of that. But if I
Yeah.
had to guess, I would suspect that was actually a cover for saying something else most of the time.
I usually think that if someone is bailing on the group, they aren't really interested, or it's not their priority. They might have others. I remember one of the longer campaigns. It was, I think it was Rollmaster. We played in a role playing club. There were, I think, 4 or 5 game masters. So they were running it like with rotating GMs, and any time a random group gathered, they could play something. I remember that even I asked to GM one session, so I ran the game for some guys in the same, I don't know, universe, in the same setting. I know, even if this setting was very strictly defined, I don't think so. Like it felt like it was a continuous game. Although it wasn't really. Like some people had their own ideas, or in this one case when I ran the game, I think the consequence was that one character was wanted by someone, should be assassinated or something, but it didn't matter because on the next session another GM burned the city to the ground, so it didn't matter anymore, right?
Multiple GMing is like the gods of chaos somehow.
Yeah. Then I remember we played modules or scenarios, like a campaign, like a written campaign. It was possible to run it for a year. Like in the school year, we gathered like every week or every other week to run a part, and in this way, I think in this group managed to do 2 or 3 campaigns, so 3 years straight. But I think the main it was we thought about this as a campaign with an ending. Like we have this book to run through to make this, because one of those were D&D campaign 3rd edition. So we had this encounters to do, those fights to do, these dungeons to do. So we're like just running through the whole campaign, and then there were some loose threads, like some NPCs that weren't in the scenario but were added on the way, or just put into the situation. We needed some different ending for some things like that. But there is also a different way to play, I think. I don't really know how to I can describe it, and maybe you'll help me. Is this something similar or not? We played Polaris campaign lately. It was 11 sessions. And Polaris says that there is an ending. It's not strictly defined, but it should be either the knights are dead, or something awful happened, or there's the end of the world, or something. And we decided to meet every other Tuesday to play. We had only 2 hours time every time. But when 2 characters died, we decided that it's a good time for ending the whole campaign. So we made 1 extra session to like give some endings to 2 other characters.
Right.
But it wasn't decided that when we will end, or we didn't decided how many sessions we're going to go. Although the system says how long it will be, so it gives us ending conditions. But I kind of think that we didn't abide by the rules.
Ending instead, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like it flowed from the fiction, but also it's kind of rushed, I think. But we wanted to make the ending because we knew we didn't have the we didn't want to play it anymore.
Right, we didn't
for this session. It might go so long, and we weren't interested. So it was better to give it any ending.
Mm-hmm.